One of the things that comes to mind when Denise mentioned that back-to-back is that one of our exercises that we use now as a point of discussion on our revised civility campaign is to encourage people to think of someone who is the most unlikely person that they could sit down with to talk about an issue where they're on the opposite side and take the time to do it. So reach out, have coffee, have lunch, and we've got a nice little video that goes with it that encourages people to see what can happen when you have that kind of discussion. And also what can happen when we have this kind of discussion is what I want to have Doug come up here and talk about is as a result of including, as I mentioned, media, the public, and elected officials and talk about their views of each other's roles in this. One of the exciting developments is something that Doug has been very much involved in around the state. Because Ohio is the center of the universe in 2016 in the presidential election, and trying to find a different way to approach it. So, managing editor of the Akron Beacon Journal, Doug Oplinger.
I have to say, first of all, I'm very disappointed that no one has mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Had Carolyn been here, she was going to.
I feel like I'm in a surreal world here because we've been living Cleveland Cavaliers for the last several days, and that's evidence that miracles can happen when you see something like that. And also, it's so great for folks from Akron to remind people that the hero of the Cleveland Cavaliers comes from Akron, Ohio, and we say to the folks of Cleveland, you're welcome. Right? This is really uncomfortable, to be honest with you, to be a journalist speaking about this cause that journalists should be a part of, standing with politicians. This is not something you see. But I need to tell you a story. I was at a Cleveland Leadership Council event a few weeks ago with Plain Dealer and Northeast Ohio and Cleveland.com and WKYC TV. And we were talking about the role media tries to play in helping communities identify and solve problems. And we talked about that. Plain Dealer folks talked about the lead paint in the houses that was poisoning kids and their project to change that problem. And they did a wonderful job. And the Cleveland.com talked about injustices in the justice system and the fine work they did. And the Beacon Journal talked about the ways during the Great Recession that we helped individuals cope economically, personally, with their finances. And then in 2012, we talked about our Civility project. So we had this long conversation, we had breakout groups, and we came back, and all these type A personalities, these young leaders from Cleveland, they're jammed this room. And they're asked by the facilitator, so what did you learn from this? And the first person just jumped out of her seat, and she said, I'd like to believe journalists care about their communities, but I don't believe it. I just can't believe it. I'd like to, but I don't let my kids watch television. I do not let them watch the news. The second person who jumped up and said, for you to say that journalists care about the communities is not something I would have ever guessed. We got a problem. We have a trust problem. We did a 3-day deliberative event in Akron just a few weeks ago. It was facilitated by the Jefferson Center. They had a whole bunch of people in a room, 3 days, locked in, talking about their relationship with media. And they talked about what they don't like about the media. They learned how the media does its work. They were fascinated by the process. And in the end, they came up with a list of things that they want news media to do for them so that they can be informed participants of democracy this year. And when they got to the end with all these recipes for what each of us needs to do, I kept hearing around the tables, but how will we know if we can trust that reporter? We have a problem. I want to go back to 2012 when the Beacon Journal and the Faith Community and the Bliss Institute, led by John Green, kind of just all of a sudden coalesced in a discussion about what is going on with political rhetoric. Something is terribly wrong, particularly in Ohio, where these campaigns come in and spend millions of dollars making us angry with one another so that we can't talk about tough issues. We could not have a sane civil conversation about health care without people getting upset. John Green did a poll of the area, and he asked a number of questions about what are the tough issues to discuss, and what is the #1 cause of incivility in our public discourse. And they said, the news media. Holy shnikes. That's the way we talk in Akron. So there's a problem there. And as we're having this conversation, I somehow hook up with Carolyn Lubensmeyer from NICD, and she said, duh, we're doing the same research, and you're the problem. And as we finished 2012 and the coverage of incivility in Akron, some things happen. We hear about the Civility program in Cincinnati, and the State Bar Association with its Thomas Moyer Legacy Committee has started a statewide effort, and there's something brewing in Ohio. And Carolyn is watching this from Washington and says, we're going to do something in Ohio. All these millions of dollars are going to come back to Ohio in 2016. They're going to try to make people hate each other again, but there is some kind of undercurrent that wants to change that. And we think we can go in and make a change. So in October, Carolyn's group did a retreat of news media, citizens, and leaders. And let me tell you, the news media embarrassed themselves. We talked about how we think about citizens. And the citizens found out about it, and they said, whoa, hold on. You think that way about us? You think we're apathetic? We're uninformed? We're misinformed? We don't care? We all got our own lives, and you need to respect us. And there were a number of journalists who kind of were taken down a few notches, thinking, we got a problem. So a few weeks after that, we pulled together representatives of almost every news organization in Ohio, in Columbus. The Dispatch made a room for us. We met and we said, we got a problem. We got to do something about it. How are we going to restore trust? And in so doing, how are we going to help people feel they are a part of democracy? And how are we going to hold elected officials accountable to what's important to Ohioans? And we set some goals. We were going to do polling to find out what Ohioans care about. What are their concerns? We were going to use that to guide our coverage. We're going to use that to hold candidates accountable. In the process, we are going to make sure that we represent the diversity of Ohioans. What an incredible state. From one end to the other. It's a very different world, and you talked about that. So somehow, we need to do all that. The Knight Foundation said, we like what you're doing. They give us $175,000 for all these news media organizations to do unique polling. John Green at the University of Akron, Bliss Institute, designed some incredible polling that asks, right off the bat, 3 open-ended questions. For you personally, what is the most important issue this year? Didn't cast it in politics or campaigns. Open-ended question. Number 2 question, what are the reasons that you think that? And number 3 question, what do you think are the solutions? We have 1,000 different answers to 3 different questions, illustrating that Ohioans, first of all, are terribly stressed. The economy is killing them. They are angry as hell. And they have 1,000 different reasons and solutions. And beginning Sunday, we're going to start writing about that poll. We have already written a series of stories on a negative campaign ads that divide us so much. And in that series of stories, the University of Akron volunteered to hook people up to wires, show them negative ads, and they came out of the room saying, this is crazy. One person said, these ads make my skin crawl. So we wrote this series of stories about how you're manipulated. And we produced a survival kit and published it in many news organizations, TV, public radio, newspapers. Here's a survival kit. When those negative ads come on, take this kit, freeze it, ask yourself, how am I vulnerable? How are they playing on my mind? How are they trying to take advantage of me? Reduce this. You can't stop the negative ads, but maybe the news media can help you neutralize them, to digest them, and to fight back in some way. So in all of this, we're going to try to empower the citizens, the diversity across Ohio, empower them in fighting the negative ads, in exploring their own solutions. The next series of poll stories we're going to look at, we'll look at the solutions. We'll talk about, here's what different people think can be done. Here are some answers to that. And then we'll go to the candidates and say, what do you think about these solutions? And we'll hold the candidates accountable. This is a year-long project. It is incredible. Every Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I never know how many news organizations are going to tune into the conversation, but we talk about story development. How is this important to the citizens of Ohio? How is it going to change the conversation? How does it rebuild our trust? So along comes Revive Civility with this pledge that they want us to take. Interesting. NICD did a study. They brought together national media 18 months ago, I think, to talk about what does media need to do to restore trust. And they came up with 5 points. And you know what? They're the same points that the Ohio news media agreed to back in December. And that we talk about almost every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. That's amazing. We've got a problem in the news media. The public thinks we are the problem. We have an opportunity to do something. And something really cool is happening in Ohio. Not only with the news media, but with groups like Frank's and Joyce's and Ted's. They're all kind of working at the same time. There's a perfect storm in Ohio. There are rich people along the Potomac sitting in dark rooms figuring out how can we beat up on Ohio so that they hate each other and don't vote. Somehow we are going to make sense of that for the citizens of Ohio. And this is really a cool moment. And I hope that all of us in journalism recognize we've got a problem and we become a part of the solution.